Washington, D.C., January 2026. The Capitol dome gleams in winter sunlight. Inside, congressmen debate another spending bill. The dollar remains the world's reserve currency. American military bases dot 750 installations across 80 countries. The stock market hovers near all-time highs. From the surface, American power appears permanent, unshakable, exceptional. But beneath that surface, something is breaking. The United States national debt stands at $36 trillion. That's 120% of GDP. Every year, the government borrows another $1.8 trillion just to keep the lights on. Interest payments alone now exceed $1 trillion annually, more than the entire defense budget. Meanwhile, trust in institutions has collapsed to historic lows. Infrastructure crumbles. Manufacturing capacity bleeds overseas. Drug overdoses kill 100,000 Americans every year. The homeless population explodes in cities that were once symbols of prosperity. This is not decay. This is a pattern. It was not random decline. It was stage 5 of a 7-stage collapse sequence that has destroyed every global superpower for the last 500 years. Spain followed it from 1590 to 1670. Britain followed it from 1914 to 1954. The Soviet Union followed it from 1945 to 1991. 3 empires, 3 total collapses, all following the exact same sequence, stage by stage, decision by decision, almost like reading from a script that ends in catastrophe every single time. And right now, in 2026, the United States has completed 5 of those 7 stages. The question is not whether America is following the pattern. The evidence says it already is. The question is this: can a superpower recognize the pattern while it's happening and change course? Or does every empire believe it's different until collapse is already underway? To understand where America stands in this cycle, we must first understand what the cycle actually looks like, not in theory, but in practice. Not in economic textbooks, but in the brutal reality of 3 empires that believed they were invincible right up until the moment they weren't. Imperial collapse follows a pattern so consistent that historians can trace it across centuries like a fingerprint. It doesn't start with military defeat or foreign invasion. It starts with economic exhaustion. An empire extends beyond its ability to sustain itself. Military commitments it cannot fund. Promises it cannot keep, debts it cannot repay. At first, the decline is invisible. The currency still works. The military still wins battles. Trade partners still line up. But beneath that facade, the foundation cracks. Resources get misallocated. Productive capacity shrinks. The best minds leave for rising powers. Then comes acceleration. Allies start hedging their bets. Enemies test boundaries. Trade partners quietly seek alternatives to the reserve currency. And suddenly, the advantages that made you powerful become vulnerabilities. Your currency, once demanded by everyone, comes flooding back home, triggering inflation. Your military, spread across the globe, becomes financially unsustainable. Your promises, once guaranteed by strength, become empty words. The 7-stage pattern is identical across 3 empires. Stage 1, military overextension, wars on multiple fronts, bases everywhere, defense spending that bleeds the treasury dry. Stage 2, currency debasement, printing money or mixing metals, devaluing what was once trusted. Stage 3, debt spiral, borrowing to pay interest on previous borrowing, bankruptcy after bankruptcy. Stage 4, loss of productive capacity, importing everything, making nothing, wealth flowing out instead of circulating. Stage 5, social decay, collapsing trust, rising crime, brain drain, internal fracturing. Stage 6, loss of reserve currency status, allies diversify, trade shifts to other currencies, the economic privilege evaporates. Stage 7, collapse, not gradual decline, sudden implosion. The Soviet Union went from superpower to non-existent in 900 days. Spain took 80 years. Britain took 40 years. The USSR took less than 3 years. But the sequence was identical. Here's what should concern every American watching this. The United States has already completed Stage 1 through Stage 5. We are not approaching the pattern. We are deep inside it. And Stage 6, loss of reserve currency status, is already showing early warning signs. To understand how empires die, we must examine the economic forces at work in each stage and compare them to where America stands today. In 1590, Spain was the richest empire on earth. They controlled half the world's gold and silver, conquered the Aztec and Inca empires, dominated European politics, and maintained the Spanish real as the global reserve currency. Everyone wanted Spanish silver. King Philip II ruled an empire where, quite literally, the sun never set on Spanish territory. Spain had discovered what every empire dreams of finding: unlimited wealth. But there was a problem. That unlimited wealth was not produced. It was extracted. Spanish galleons brought home 200 tons of silver per year by 1550. By 1600, over 400 tons annually. The silver mines of Potosi in modern-day Bolivia became the money supply of Europe. Spain didn't need to manufacture goods or grow food or build ships. They simply spent silver and bought everything from other countries. Spanish nobility considered work beneath them. Manufacturing declined. Agriculture stagnated. All the wealth that flowed in from the Americas flowed right back out again to pay for French wine, Italian silk, Dutch goods. Spain became a conduit. Wealth passed through, but none of it stayed. Meanwhile, King Philip II was fighting wars everywhere simultaneously, against the Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean, against France and Italy, against Protestant rebels in the Netherlands, against England's navy, wars in the Philippines, wars in the Americas. By 1580, Spain had military commitments on 4 continents. Stage 1, military overextension, complete. Half of Spain's revenue went to the military. But even an empire swimming in silver couldn't fund wars on 4 continents forever. So Spain did what every failing empire does when tax revenue isn't enough. They debased the currency. They started mixing copper into silver coins. A coin that was supposed to be pure silver became 50% copper, then 75% copper. The face value stayed the same, but the real value plummeted. By 1600, Spanish silver coins contained barely any silver at all. Merchants stopped accepting them at face value. Inflation exploded. Stage 2, currency debasement, complete. But Spain still needed money for wars, so they borrowed, from Italian bankers, from German bankers, from anyone who would lend. By 1557, less than 20 years into Philip II's reign, Spain declared bankruptcy. They defaulted on their debts, restructured, and kept borrowing. They declared bankruptcy again in 1560, again in 1575, again in 1596, 4 bankruptcies in 40 years. Each time they promised reforms. Each time they went right back to borrowing and spending. Stage 3, debt spiral, complete. Here's the tragic irony. Spain had all the gold and silver in the world, and it destroyed them. Because when you have unlimited money, you stop producing. Why grow food when you can import it? Why build ships when you can buy them? Why innovate when you can just spend? By 1600, Spain was producing almost nothing. They were entirely dependent on imports, entirely dependent on silver to pay for everything. And when the silver mines began to deplete, when production dropped, the entire system collapsed. Stage 4, loss of productive capacity, complete. Jump forward 300 years. Britain, 1914. The British Empire controlled 25% of the world's land surface and 400 million subjects. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. Every major trade contract was denominated in pounds. Every central bank held British bonds. London was the financial center of the world. And just like Spain 300 years earlier, they believed it was permanent. But they were already following the pattern. By 1900, Britain had military commitments everywhere: India, Africa, the Middle East, China, the Pacific, the Caribbean. They had to defend territory on 6 continents. The cost was staggering, and when World War I started in 1914, Britain faced a choice: stay neutral and let Europe destroy itself, or jump in and bankrupt the empire to win. They chose to fight. World War I cost Britain over $40 billion. That's $1 trillion in today's money. They borrowed from everyone, mostly from the United States. By 1918, Britain owed America billions. The creditor had become the debtor. Stage 1, military overextension, complete. But they'd won the war. They kept the empire. They thought they could rebuild. They were wrong. The pound sterling was supposed to be backed by gold, but the war had drained Britain's gold reserves. They'd shipped gold to America to pay for weapons, food, supplies. By 1920, Britain's gold reserves were half what they had been in 1914, but Britain tried to maintain the pound's value anyway. In 1925, they went back on the gold standard at the pre-war rate. The problem? The pound was overvalued. British exports became too expensive. Manufacturing declined. Unemployment rose. And the government had to keep interest rates high to defend the currency, which destroyed the domestic economy. By 1931, they couldn't hold it anymore. Britain abandoned the gold standard. The pound lost 25% of its value overnight. The global reserve currency had just admitted it couldn't keep its promises. Stage 2, currency debasement, complete. Britain never recovered from World War I debt. Then World War II started, another $120 billion in costs, more borrowing from America. By 1945, Britain owed the United States and Canada over $30 billion, more than Britain's entire GDP. The war was won, but the empire was finished. Stage 3, debt spiral, complete. In 1947, Britain gave up India, the crown jewel, the source of wealth for 200 years, gone. Over the next 20 years, they lost everything: Africa, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, the Caribbean. By 1970, the British Empire existed only in history books. Stage 4, loss of empire, complete. The pound kept falling. In 1940, 1 pound equaled $4.03. By 1950, $2.80. By 1980, $2.30. Today, $1.27. The global reserve currency became a regional currency. Britain tried to maintain the pretense: permanent seat on the UN Security Council, nuclear weapons, special relationship with America. But everyone knew the truth. They were a former power, a museum of what used to be great. The Soviet Union, 1945 to 1991. After World War II, the USSR emerged as a superpower: nuclear weapons, massive military, control over Eastern Europe, satellites in space. They believed they were the future. Communism would bury capitalism. The Soviet model would dominate. For 45 years, they competed with America, matched the U.S. militarily, built more tanks, more missiles, more troops. But beneath the surface, the economy was dying. The Soviet Union spent 15 to 20% of GDP on the military. That's triple what America spent. They had to match American technology, American reach, American alliances. But their economy was a fraction of the size. They were in Afghanistan, propping up Cuba, supporting Syria, Vietnam, North Korea, Angola, Ethiopia. Everywhere America had influence, they had to counter. The cost was unsustainable. Stage 1, military overextension, complete. The Soviet economy wasn't growing, it was stagnating. Central planning couldn't adapt. Innovation died. Technology lagged 20 years behind the West. By the 1980s, the USSR was importing grain to feed its own people, a superpower that couldn't feed itself. Meanwhile, the ruble was worthless outside Soviet borders. They printed more and more to fund military spending and subsidize failing industries. Inflation eroded what little value remained. Stage 2, currency debasement, complete. By the mid-1980s, the USSR was borrowing from Western banks to stay afloat. They borrowed to fund Afghanistan. They borrowed to subsidize Eastern Europe. They borrowed to pay for imports because domestic production had collapsed. The debt piled up. And unlike America or Britain, the Soviet Union had no reserve currency privilege. No one wanted rubles. When oil prices dropped in the 1980s, the USSR's main source of hard currency, the system broke. Stage 3, debt spiral, complete. By 1991, the Soviet Union couldn't pay its bills, the military couldn't be paid, the government couldn't function. The ruble became worthless. A superpower with 30,000 nuclear weapons collapsed from economic implosion, not from war, from bankruptcy. The USSR went from superpower to non-existent in 900 days. 15 republics declared independence. The Communist Party dissolved. The Cold War ended, not because the West won militarily, but because the Soviet Union bankrupted itself trying to keep up. Stages 4, 5, 6, and 7, complete in rapid succession. Now let's talk about America. The United States military maintains 750 installations in 80 countries. Defense spending exceeds $800 billion per year, more than the next 10 countries combined. America has fought wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Somalia, Yemen. Trillions spent, little strategic benefit. War fatigue has set in. Stage 1, military overextension, complete. Since 1971, the dollar hasn't been backed by gold. It's been backed by trust. Trust that the U.S. government will maintain its value. But the Federal Reserve has printed trillions of dollars in the last 15 years. Quantitative easing, stimulus packages, pandemic spending, the money supply exploded. The mechanism is different from Spain's copper coins, but the result is the same: debasement. Stage 2, currency debasement, complete. The U.S. national debt is $36 trillion. That's 120% of GDP. Interest payments alone approach $1 trillion per year, more than defense spending. America runs deficits every year, $1.8 trillion in 2024 during peacetime in a growing economy. We borrow to pay interest on previous borrowing. That's the definition of a debt spiral. Stage 3, debt spiral, complete. America doesn't make things anymore. We design, we finance, we consume, but we don't produce. Manufacturing has been gutted, shipped to China, Mexico, Vietnam. America imports $800 billion more than it exports annually. We're dependent on foreign supply chains for everything: medicine, electronics, steel, even military components. Just like Spain became dependent on imports while silver flowed out, America is dependent on imports while dollars flow out. Stage 4, loss of productive capacity, complete. Trust in institutions is at all-time lows. Crime is rising. Homelessness explodes. Drug overdoses kill 100,000 Americans every year. The best and brightest are leaving or checking out. Fertility rates collapse. Political dysfunction is total. Americans can't agree on anything, can't fix anything, can't build anything. The signs of decay are everywhere, but everyone pretends it's fine. Stage 5, social decay, complete. America stands at stage 5 of a 7-stage collapse pattern. The Soviet Union reached stage 5 before total collapse. So did Britain. Spain lasted longer, but the sequence was identical. Stage 6 is loss of reserve currency status. That's when allies start diversifying away from the dollar, when trade shifts to other currencies, when the dollar comes flooding back home because no one needs to hold it anymore, triggering massive inflation. We're already seeing early signs. BRICS nations are developing payment alternatives. Central banks worldwide are buying gold at the fastest pace in decades. China and Russia trade in yuan and rubles. Saudi Arabia now accepts yuan for oil. The cracks are forming. Stage 7 is collapse, not gradual decline, sudden implosion. The Soviet Union went from superpower to non-existent in 900 days. Britain lost its empire in 20 years. Spain took longer, but the result was identical. When reserve currency status fails, when debt becomes mathematically impossible to service, when the military can't be funded, empires don't decline gracefully. They collapse quickly, brutally, and everyone who thought it couldn't happen here learns the same lesson every empire learns. It can, and it does. Here's what that means in practical terms. If America loses reserve currency status, the consequences are immediate and severe. Right now, the U.S. runs massive trade deficits because foreign countries need dollars for international trade. They accept dollars for goods and hold those dollars as reserves. That privilege allows America to import far more than it exports, $800 billion more every year. If that privilege disappears, the trade deficit becomes unsustainable overnight. Import prices skyrocket. Inflation accelerates. The standard of living drops. Social unrest intensifies, and the government faces an impossible choice: default on debt or print money to pay it. Both options lead to currency collapse. This is not theoretical. This is what happened to Spain when silver ran out, to Britain when the pound lost reserve status, to the USSR when the ruble became worthless. But there's a deeper pattern here that history teaches us. Every empire believed it was different. Spain thought their silver made them invincible. Britain thought their empire was permanent. The Soviet Union thought communism would bury capitalism. They all believed the pattern wouldn't apply to them. They all refused to accept reality until collapse was already underway. The United States today tells itself the same story. We're different. We have the strongest military. The dollar is irreplaceable. Our economy is resilient. Technology will save us. That's what they all said. The tragic irony is that the pattern is visible to anyone willing to look. The stages are documented. The warning signs are clear. The historical precedent is overwhelming. But empires don't die because they lack information. They die because they lack the political will to make painful changes before it's too late. Cutting military spending means losing global influence. Reducing debt means cutting programs voters depend on. Rebuilding manufacturing means short-term economic pain. Reforming currency means admitting the problem exists. So the pattern continues, stage by stage, decision by decision, until the moment when reversal becomes impossible. That's where America stands in 2026, 5 stages complete, 2 stages remaining. And the window for changing course is closing faster than anyone in power wants to admit.